The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nevada training facility as Sarah Chen adjusted her rifle scope for the 100th time. At 24, she had already broken every shooting record the Navy SEALs had on file. But today would be different. Today, she would earn a nickname that would echo through classified briefings for years to come. Commander Jake Morrison watched from the observation deck, his weathered face creased with doubt. In his 20 years with JSOC, he had never seen a female operator requested for Tier 1 missions. The brass had been clear, though. They needed someone invisible. Someone who could disappear into crowds and reappear where least expected. Sarah Chen was their answer. Target acquired at 1,200 meters. Sarah whispered into her comm. Her voice steady despite the desert wind that would challenge even seasoned snipers. The target was a playing card, no bigger than a man's hand, fluttering on a pole. 3 previous male candidates had missed completely at this distance in these conditions. Sarah controlled her breathing, feeling her heartbeat slow to match the rhythm she had perfected over thousands of practice sessions. Her finger found the trigger, with the gentleness of a mother's touch. The world around her faded. No wind, no observers, no pressure. Just her, the rifle, and the impossible shot. The crack of the rifle echoed across the desert like thunder. 2 seconds later, half of the playing card fluttered to the ground, while the other half remained pinned to the pole, split perfectly down the middle. Commander Morrison's coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the concrete floor. In all his years of warfare, he had never seen anything like it. The other instructors stood in stunned silence, their stopwatches still running, their disbelief written across their faces. "Holy Mother of God," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez, a veteran sniper who had served in 3 wars. She didn't just hit the target. She chose which half to destroy. Sarah remained motionless behind her rifle for several more seconds, as protocol demanded. When she finally lifted her head from the scope, her dark eyes held no trace of surprise or pride. This was simply what she did, what she had been born to do. The evaluation continued for 6 more hours. Sarah moved through urban scenarios like a shadow, appearing on rooftops, in windows, behind enemy lines without a sound. Each shot found its mark with mechanical precision. Each movement flowed like water, leaving no trace of her passage. By evening, the evaluation team had run out of challenges. They had thrown everything at her. Moving targets, extreme distances, adverse weather, multiple objectives. Sarah had answered each test with the same quiet competence that unnerved even the most experienced operators. Commander Morrison found himself facing a problem he had never encountered. How do you rate perfection? How do you measure something that exceeds every metric you have? 3 weeks later, Sarah received her first assignment. The mission briefing took place in a windowless room beneath the Pentagon, where even the shadows seemed to hold secrets. The target was Dmitry Kozlov, a Russian arms dealer who had been supplying weapons to terrorist cells across Eastern Europe. Intelligence indicated he would be attending a charity gala in Prague, surrounded by bodyguards and civilians. "The problem," explained Colonel Patricia Hayes, her voice crisp with authority, "is that Kozlov has survived 4 previous assassination attempts. He never stays in one place for more than 5 minutes. He uses body doubles. His security team includes former Spetsnaz operators who know how to spot threats." Sarah studied the photographs spread across the briefing table. Floor plans of the hotel, surveillance photos of Kozlov's team, escape routes marked in red ink. The mission seemed designed for failure. "What's the timeline?" Sarah asked, her voice betraying no emotion. 48 hours, Colonel Hayes replied. "You'll be inserted as part of the hotel's catering staff. 1 shot, 1 kill. Complete extraction. The Czech authorities cannot know we were there." Sarah nodded, already visualizing the mission in her mind. She could see herself moving through the hotel's service corridors, finding the perfect angle, taking the shot that would end Kozlov's reign of terror. What she couldn't see was how this mission would earn her a legend that would haunt enemy nightmares for years to come. The flight to Prague was uneventful. Sarah traveled under the identity of Maria Santos, a pastry chef from Barcelona, who specialized in elegant desserts for high society events. Her documents were flawless, her cover story rehearsed to perfection. Even her hands bore the subtle burns and scars that would mark a professional chef. Prague's ancient beauty struck her as the plane descended toward Václav Havel Airport. Red-tiled roofs stretched toward the horizon like a crimson sea, while the Vltava river curved through the city like a silver ribbon. Somewhere below, in one of those medieval buildings, Dmitry Kozlov was preparing for what would be his final social engagement. The Grand Hotel Europa stood like a monument to old-world elegance, its Art Nouveau facade glowing golden in the afternoon sun. Sarah entered through the service entrance, her chef's uniform crisp and professional, her equipment hidden in specially modified pastry bags that would pass any security inspection. Head chef Auguste Beaumont greeted her with the harried enthusiasm of a man facing an impossible deadline. The charity gala would host over 300 guests, including diplomats, business leaders, and celebrities from across Europe. Everything had to be perfect. "Maria, thank God you're here," he said in rapid French, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The dessert station is a disaster. I need someone who understands precision." Sarah smiled, allowing a hint of Spanish accent to color her English. "Precision is my specialty, chef." As she worked alongside the hotel's staff, Sarah's eyes cataloged every detail: emergency exits, security camera positions, guard rotations, sight lines from the mezzanine level, where the dessert station would be positioned. Her hands shaped delicate pastries while her mind constructed firing solutions. The hours passed quickly. By evening, the hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a glittering showcase of European society. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across marble floors, while the soft murmur of conversation mixed with the gentle notes of a string quartet. Sarah positioned herself behind the dessert station, her eyes scanning the crowd for her target. Kozlov was scheduled to arrive at 9 o'clock, but experience told her he might appear anywhere in a 2-hour window, if he appeared at all. At 8:47 p.m., a commotion near the main entrance caught her attention. 3 black sedans had arrived simultaneously, their windows tinted dark as midnight. Bodyguards emerged first, their movements synchronized like dancers in a deadly ballet. Then came the decoys, 3 men of similar build and appearance, each wearing identical tuxedos. Sarah's trained eye picked out the real Kozlov within seconds. He moved differently than the others, with the confident swagger of a man who had killed with his own hands. His left shoulder sat slightly higher than his right, a detail mentioned in his psychological profile as a result of an old war wound. The arms dealer made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with the political elite. His bodyguards maintained a protective perimeter, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Professional, disciplined, dangerous. Sarah continued arranging pastries, her movements casual and unhurried. To any observer, she appeared to be nothing more than a dedicated chef, ensuring her desserts looked perfect. Beneath the white uniform, however, her modified rifle lay broken down into components that resembled kitchen equipment. At 9:23 p.m., opportunity presented itself. Kozlov moved toward the balcony doors, seeking fresh air away from the crowded ballroom. For 30 seconds, he would be positioned near the large windows that overlooked the hotel's courtyard. 30 seconds to line up a shot that would travel 400 meters through Prague's night air. Sarah's hands moved with practiced efficiency, assembling her weapon from its disguised components. The rifle took shape like a lethal puzzle, each piece clicking into place with mechanical precision. Her scope, hidden in a decorative cake stand, mounted smoothly onto the barrel. The crowd's attention focused on a speech being delivered by the charity's chairman, creating the perfect cover for what would happen next. Sarah settled into her shooting position, the rifle barely visible among the elaborate dessert displays. Through her scope, Kozlov's face filled her view. He stood silhouetted against the bright ballroom, completely unaware that death was measuring the distance between them. His bodyguards watched the crowd inside, never thinking to scan the catering stations for threats. Sarah's breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. The world contracted to a single point of focus, where her crosshairs intersected with her target's forehead. Her finger found the trigger with familiar intimacy. The shot came without warning, silent and precise. Kozlov's head snapped back, his body crumpling to the marble floor like a marionette with severed strings. For a moment, the ballroom continued its elegant dance of conversation and laughter. unaware that one of the world's most dangerous men had just ceased to exist. Then came the screams. Sarah had already begun her extraction, breaking down her rifle with movements too quick for the naked eye to follow. Within 60 seconds, every component had vanished back into its innocent disguise. She appeared to panic along with the other staff members, her performance flawless. The bodyguards moved like hunting wolves, their weapons drawn, their eyes scanning for threats that seemed to have materialized from thin air. They found nothing. No shooter, no weapon, no evidence that anyone in the ballroom was anything other than what they appeared to be. Security cameras showed only confused guests and terrified staff. The trajectory of the bullet suggested an impossible shot from a location that contained only pastry displays and a young Spanish chef who was now crying hysterically into her hands. Within an hour, the hotel was crawling with Czech police, Interpol agents, and intelligence operatives from 6 different countries. They interviewed everyone, searched everything, analyzed every angle. The investigation would continue for months, generating thousands of pages of reports and theories. They found nothing. Sarah Chen had vanished into the Prague night like smoke on the wind, leaving behind only questions and the body of a dead arms dealer. The Spanish chef Maria Santos had never existed. The pastry equipment bore no traces of modification. Even the security footage seemed to show nothing more than a tragic and inexplicable accident. Back in Washington, Colonel Hayes received the mission report with satisfaction. Kozlov was dead, the operation had left no traces, and their new asset had performed beyond expectations. But even she couldn't have predicted what would happen next. Word spread through the international intelligence community like wildfire. Someone had killed Dmitry Kozlov in broad daylight, surrounded by his security team, without leaving a single clue. The shot was impossible. The escape was impossible. Everything about the operation defied logic and experience. But in the shadowy world of covert operations, impossible missions became legends. And legends, once born, take on lives of their own. 3 days after Prague, an encrypted message appeared on secure intelligence networks across the globe. It contained only a photograph of a playing card, split perfectly in half, and 2 words that would soon strike fear into the hearts of terrorists and criminals worldwide. Divine Ghost. The name fit perfectly. Like a spirit, she appeared without warning and vanished without trace. Like something divine, her accuracy seemed to transcend human limitations. Those who witnessed her work swore she could appear anywhere, strike from any angle, and disappear before anyone knew she had been there. JSOC classified her existence at the highest levels, but word leaked anyway. It always did in their business. Within weeks, intelligence agencies across the world were trading rumors about the female operative who could kill anyone, anywhere, anytime. Some said she could make shots that violated the laws of physics. Others claimed she could become invisible at will. A few insisted she had been genetically modified to become the perfect weapon. All agreed on one thing. If Divine Ghost was hunting you, you were already dead. Sarah Chen found the mythology amusing. She knew the truth was far simpler and more mundane. She was just very, very good at her job. But in a world where reputation could be more powerful than bullets, she had no intention of correcting anyone's misconceptions. Her superiors were delighted. They had created something more valuable than just another sniper. They had created a psychological weapon. The mere mention of Divine Ghost was enough to make high-value targets change their plans, abandon their operations, or flee to countries that couldn't guarantee their protection. But Sarah understood something her commanders didn't. In making her a legend, they had also made her a target. Every intelligence agency in the world would now be hunting for the woman behind the myth. Every terrorist organization would want to prove they could catch the uncatchable. As she prepared for her second mission, Sarah realized her greatest challenge wouldn't be the targets she was assigned to eliminate. It would be staying invisible in a world that was now actively looking for Divine Ghost. The game had changed, and the stakes had just gotten infinitely higher. 6 months after Prague, Sarah Chen stood in a Moroccan marketplace, her skin darkened by careful makeup, and her hair covered by a traditional hijab. The bustling souks of Marrakesh provided perfect cover for someone who needed to disappear completely. Vendors shouted their prices in Arabic and French while tourists bargained for carpets and jewelry, creating a symphony of chaos that masked all other sounds. But Sarah wasn't shopping. She was hunting. Her target this time was Ahmed Hassan, a bomb maker whose devices had killed hundreds of innocent people across 3 continents. Intelligence indicated he was hiding in the ancient Medina, protected by a network of local criminals and corrupt officials who had made him virtually untouchable. 3 previous attempts to capture Hassan had failed spectacularly. Delta Force had lost 2 operators in a shootout that left half a city block in ruins. The French DGSE had tried a honey trap operation that ended with their agent's body floating in the Atlas Mountains. The Israelis had attempted a drone strike that killed everyone except Hassan, who had somehow vanished minutes before the missiles arrived. Now it was Divine Ghost's turn. Sarah moved through the narrow alleys like a local woman going about her daily business. Her movements held none of the purposeful stride that marked Western operatives. Instead, she shuffled slightly, keeping her eyes downcast, occasionally stopping to examine vegetables or spices with the patient thoroughness of someone counting every dirham. The intelligence was solid, but limited. Hassan met with his lieutenant, Omar Benjaloun, every Thursday at sunset, in a specific tea house deep within the Medina. The meeting lasted exactly 20 minutes, during which Hassan would be exposed to observation from 3 different angles. After that, he would vanish back into his safe house, which was protected by enough armed guards to repel a small army. Sarah had been watching the tea house for 3 days, mapping every entrance, cataloging every face that entered or left, studying the patterns of life that flowed around her target like water around a stone. She had identified Hassan's security team, memorized their routines, and located their weapons caches. What troubled her was how easy it had been. In her experience, legendary bomb makers didn't survive by maintaining predictable schedules. They certainly didn't expose themselves to sniper fire with the regularity of a Swiss train schedule. Every instinct she had developed over years of covert operations screamed that something was wrong, but her orders were clear, and the clock was ticking. Hassan's next bomb was reportedly already in development, intended for a target that would make Prague look like a minor inconvenience. If she didn't stop him now, hundreds more innocent people would die. Thursday arrived with the kind of perfect clarity that made long-distance shooting almost too easy. The air was still, the visibility unlimited, and the temperature stable. Sarah had positioned herself in the upper floor of a carpet shop, her rifle assembled and ready, her escape route planned down to the second. At exactly 5:47 p.m., Hassan appeared. He moved with the careful paranoia of a man who knew he was hunted, his eyes constantly scanning the crowds and rooftops. His bodyguards formed a loose perimeter around him, their positioning professional and disciplined. Everything about the scene matched the intelligence reports perfectly, too perfectly. Sarah tracked Hassan through her scope as he approached the tea house. Her crosshairs settled on his forehead with mechanical precision. The distance was 380 meters. An easy shot for someone of her abilities. Wind speed was negligible. Lighting conditions were optimal. Her finger found the trigger, and the familiar calm settled over her like a blanket. The world narrowed to a single point of focus, where her target's face filled her view. Hassan paused outside the tea house entrance, turning slightly to speak to one of his guards. Sarah's breath caught. For just an instant, Hassan looked directly at her position. Not in her general direction, not scanning the area like a careful operative. He looked directly at the window where she crouched. And he smiled. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't a hunting mission. It was a trap. Somehow, impossibly, her target knew exactly where she was. The intelligence had been leaked. The routine had been established specifically to draw her in. And now she was the one being hunted. Sarah's finger moved away from the trigger as her mind raced through implications and escape scenarios. If Hassan knew her position, then his security team knew it too. They had probably been watching her for days, letting her think she was the predator while they prepared their own killing ground. A glint of sunlight off metal caught her attention. On a rooftop 200 meters to her left, someone was adjusting what looked suspiciously like a sniper scope. Another flash came from her right, where a second shooter was taking position. Within seconds, She spotted 4 different teams moving to surround the carpet shop. The trap was closing, and she was at the center of it. Sarah began breaking down her rifle with desperate efficiency. Her escape route led through the shop's rear entrance into a maze of interconnected courtyards. But she had to assume that path was already compromised. Every exit, every hiding spot, every contingency plan might have been anticipated by an enemy who had been studying her methods for months. The shop owner, an elderly man named Rashid, who had been paid handsomely for the use of his building, suddenly appeared at the top of the stairs. His face held none of the nervous concern she expected. Instead, he smiled with the same knowing expression she had seen on Hassan's face. "Miss Chen," he said in perfect English, his accent suggesting an expensive education far from Morocco. "Or, do you prefer Divine Ghost? I've always wondered if legends bleed like ordinary people." Sarah's hand moved to the pistol concealed beneath her robes, but Rashid raised his hands peacefully. "Please, there's no need for violence. Not yet. My employers simply want to talk." "Your employers?" "People who appreciate your work. People who understand that someone with your unique talents shouldn't be wasting them on government salary. People who can make you truly wealthy beyond your wildest dreams." Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. Russian intelligence, Chinese military, private military contractors, organized crime syndicates, any number of groups would pay fortunes for someone with her abilities. The question was whether this was a genuine recruitment attempt or an elaborate execution. "What makes you think I'm interested in changing employers?" Rashid's smile widened. "Because you're about to realize that your current employers have betrayed you. The mission parameters you were given are completely false. Ahmed Hassan isn't a bomb maker. He's a CIA asset who's been feeding intelligence to your organization for 2 years. This entire operation was designed to expose Divine Ghost so that other interested parties could make contact." The words hit Sarah like bullets. If Rashid was telling the truth, then everything about this mission had been a lie from the beginning. Her own government had used her as bait in a scheme to auction off her services to the highest bidder. "You have 30 seconds to decide," Rashid continued, his voice losing its friendly tone. "Accept our offer and walk away from this situation with a Swiss bank account worth $50 million. Refuse, and discover whether Divine Ghost can survive when the entire intelligence community knows exactly where she is." Sarah's training had prepared her for capture, torture, and death. It had not prepared her for betrayal by the people she had sworn to serve. The realization that she was nothing more than a commodity to be traded left her feeling hollow and cold, but it also made her very, very angry. "Tell your employers I have a counteroffer," she said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "I'm listening." Sarah's pistol appeared in her hand with deadly speed, the barrel pressing against Rashid's forehead before he could blink. "They can all go to hell." The old man's eyes went wide with surprise and fear. "You don't understand. There are 12 teams surrounding this building. Snipers on every rooftop, spotters on every street corner. You cannot possibly escape. Watch me." Sarah pulled the trigger, and Rashid's lifeless body crumpled to the floor. She had no time for questions. No time for moral debates about killing potentially innocent people. She had been betrayed, sold, and hunted like an animal. Now she would respond in the only language her enemies understood. The carpet shop erupted into chaos as Sarah moved through it like a force of nature. Her modified rifle reassembled itself in her hands as she reached the rear window. The courtyard below was empty, but she could hear vehicles moving into position around the building's perimeter. A sniper's bullet shattered the window frame inches from her head, followed immediately by 2 more shots that destroyed the wall behind her. Professional shooters, good equipment, excellent positioning. Under normal circumstances, she would be impressed. These weren't normal circumstances. Sarah dropped through the destroyed window into the courtyard below, landing in a combat roll that carried her behind a stone fountain just as automatic weapons fire erupted from 3 different directions. Bullets sparked off ancient stones while she analyzed firing patterns and planned her next move. The enemy had numbers and position, but they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed Divine Ghost was just an exceptionally skilled human being. They were about to learn that legends played by different rules. Sarah's rifle barked once, and a sniper on the eastern rooftop pitched forward, his weapon clattering to the street below. A second shot silenced the machine gun nest that had been trying to pin her down. A third shot punched through the engine block of an approaching vehicle, sending it rolling to a stop with steam pouring from its ruined motor. But for every enemy she eliminated, 2 more seemed to take their place. This wasn't just a capture operation. It was a full-scale military assault designed to bring down someone they considered a strategic threat. Sarah moved through the Medina like a ghost given solid form, appearing at impossible angles, striking from unexpected directions, vanishing before return fire could find her. She used the ancient architecture to her advantage, turning narrow alleys into kill zones and rooftop positions into snipers' nests. The battle raged for 23 minutes before the enemy forces began to withdraw. Sarah had killed or wounded at least 15 operatives, destroyed 4 vehicles, and escaped 3 separate encirclements. More importantly, she had sent a message that would echo through intelligence communities worldwide. Divine Ghost was not for sale. Divine Ghost was not for capture. And anyone who tried to hunt her would learn why legends were more dangerous than ordinary humans. As the sun set over Marrakesh, Sarah disappeared into the crowds of tourists and locals who had emerged from their hiding places to stare at the destruction she had left behind. Police sirens wailed in the distance, and military helicopters circled overhead like mechanical vultures, but the woman they were searching for was already gone, vanished into the shadows of a world that no longer held any safe places for someone who had become too dangerous for any government to control. 3 hours later, encrypted messages began appearing on secure networks across the globe. The contents were simple and direct. Divine Ghost had gone rogue. The most dangerous sniper in the world was now a free agent, with no loyalties except to herself. Every intelligence agency, every military organization, every government that had ever used her services was now a potential target. The hunt had begun, but the roles had been reversed. The predator had become the prey. And the prey had teeth that could reach anywhere in the world. Sarah Chen understood that her life as she had known it was over. She could never go home, never trust her handlers, never again believe that she was fighting for something larger than herself. But in losing everything she had once valued, she had gained something infinitely more precious: freedom. From this moment forward, Divine Ghost would hunt only the targets she chose, eliminate only the threats she deemed worthy of death. No more orders from faceless bureaucrats. No more missions designed to serve political interests she didn't understand. From now on, she would be judge, jury, and executioner for a world that had proven it could not police itself. The legend of Divine Ghost was about to become something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. It was about to become true. 2 years had passed since Marrakesh, and the world had learned to fear the name Divine Ghost in ways that government handlers had never anticipated. No longer bound by military chains of command or political considerations, Sarah Chen had become something unprecedented in the history of covert operations. A rogue operator with the skills to strike anywhere and the principles to choose her own targets. The list of her victims read like a catalog of the world's worst nightmares. Viktor Petrov, the Russian oligarch who trafficked children across Eastern Europe, found dead in his Moscow penthouse, with a single bullet hole where his left eye used to be. Maria Santos, the cartel leader who specialized in kidnapping American tourists, discovered lifeless in her fortified compound in Guatemala, despite being surrounded by 30 armed guards. Chen Liu, the Chinese official who sold state secrets to the highest bidder, eliminated during a high-security meeting in Beijing's Forbidden City, while surveillance cameras mysteriously malfunctioned for exactly 47 seconds. Each assassination bore Divine Ghost's signature: impossible shots, perfect timing, and complete disappearance without a trace. Intelligence agencies across 6 continents had tried to track her movements, predict her targets, or anticipate her methods. All had failed spectacularly, but success had come with a price that Sarah was only beginning to understand. She stood now in a safe house overlooking the Swiss Alps, her face reflected in windows that showed a woman who had aged decades in just 2 years. The constant running, fighting, and killing had carved lines around her eyes that no amount of rest could erase. Her hands, once steady as stone, sometimes trembled when she thought no one was watching. More troubling than the physical wear was the isolation that had become her constant companion. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Every contact might be a trap. Every ally, a potential betrayer. She had become the most feared sniper in the world, but she had also become the loneliest person on Earth. The secure tablet on her table chimed softly, indicating an incoming message through channels that changed daily to avoid detection. Sarah's network of informants had grown over the months, fed by a combination of fear and respect from people who appreciated that divine ghost only killed those who truly deserved to die. This message was different. Instead of intelligence about corrupt officials or terrorist leaders, it contained something that made Sarah's blood run cold. A detailed psychological profile that could only have been written by someone who had been studying her for years. The file was marked with the seal of an organization she had never heard of, the Prometheus Group. According to the document, they were a private consortium of former intelligence officials, military contractors, and corporate executives who specialized in solving problems that governments couldn't handle officially. More disturbing than their existence was their offer. They wanted to hire Divine Ghost for what they called the ultimate mission, eliminating a target so dangerous that his continued existence threatened global stability. The fee they offered was astronomical, enough money to disappear permanently and live comfortably for several lifetimes. But it was the identity of the target that made Sarah's hands shake as she read the file. General Marcus Kane, former commander of JSOC, and the man who had personally recruited her into the program that created Divine Ghost. According to the Prometheus Group, Kane had been selling classified information to foreign governments for over a decade, including details about every covert operation Sarah had ever participated in. The betrayal ran deeper than simple greed. Kane had apparently been using JSOC operations to eliminate his personal enemies while enriching himself through arms deals and intelligence sales. Prague hadn't been about stopping an arms dealer. It had been about removing competition from someone who was selling weapons to higher bidders. Marrakesh had been the final step in his plan to monetize Divine Ghost's abilities by auctioning her services to the highest bidder. When that failed, he had spread word through intelligence networks that she had gone rogue and needed to be eliminated, effectively placing a bounty on her head that had made the last 2 years a continuous nightmare of hunting and being hunted. Sarah read the file 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of manipulation and betrayal. Every mission she had completed, every life she had taken, every principle she had sacrificed in service to her country, all of it had been orchestrated by a man who viewed her as nothing more than a profitable asset. The rage that built inside her was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was cold and pure and absolutely focused, like the moment before pulling a trigger magnified 1,000-fold. But this time, she would be pulling the trigger for herself. According to the Prometheus Group's intelligence, Kane would be attending a private security conference in Dubai next week. The event was invitation only, held in one of the world's most secure hotels, with every attendee protected by layers of corporate and government security. Getting close enough to Kane would require penetrating defenses that had been designed specifically to stop someone with her capabilities. Perfect. Sarah spent 3 days planning an approach that would have been impossible for anyone else in the world. She would enter Dubai as Dr. Elena Vasquez, a cybersecurity consultant whose credentials were so perfectly forged that they included backdated university records and published research papers. Her appearance would be altered through surgical makeup that would fool facial recognition software, while maintaining the natural look that allowed her to blend into any crowd. The rifle would be smuggled in pieces through diplomatic pouches controlled by assets she had cultivated over 2 years of careful relationship building. Each component would arrive at the hotel through different channels. The barrel disguised as a sculpture base, the scope hidden in medical equipment, the ammunition incorporated into decorative jewelry. Most importantly, she would have help. Dr. James Foster had been Kane's communications officer for 3 years, before discovering his commander's treachery. Kane had tried to have Foster eliminated when he asked too many questions about classified information leaks. But Foster had survived the assassination attempt and gone underground. He had been the one to contact the Prometheus Group and provide the intelligence that made this mission possible. Foster would be attending the conference as himself, using his legitimate security clearance to provide cover for Sarah's movements. When the moment came, He would create the distraction that gave her a clear shot at the man who had betrayed them both. Dubai's skyline rose from the desert like a monument to human ambition, all gleaming towers and impossible architecture that seemed to defy both gravity and good sense. The Burj Al Zahra, where the security conference was being held, stood at the heart of it all. 47 floors of luxury and paranoia, designed to host people who had too many enemies to sleep comfortably anywhere else. Sarah arrived 3 days early, establishing her cover identity and mapping the hotel's security systems with the thoroughness that had kept her alive through dozens of impossible missions. The building was a fortress disguised as a luxury resort, with enough guards and surveillance equipment to protect a small nation's worth of dignitaries. But every fortress had weaknesses if you knew where to look. The conference began on a Thursday morning with the kind of pomp and ceremony that men like Kane used to convince themselves they were important rather than merely dangerous. Sarah watched from the hotel's cafe as military contractors, intelligence officials, and corporate executives exchanged business cards and war stories while serving staff moved invisibly around them. Kane looked older than she remembered, his hair gone completely gray and his face carrying the weight of too many secrets, but his eyes held the same cold calculation that had marked him as a predator from the first day she met him. When he spoke to other attendees, they listened with the deference paid to someone who controlled information that could destroy careers or end lives. Sarah felt no satisfaction in seeing him again. Only the focused clarity that came with finally having a target worthy of her hatred. The opportunity came on the conference's second day. Kane was scheduled to deliver a keynote address about the future of asymmetric warfare in the hotel's main ballroom. Security would be at maximum alert, with every entrance monitored and every sightline covered by counter-sniper teams, which was exactly why Sarah's plan would work. At 2:47 p.m., as Kane began his presentation about the changing nature of modern combat, Sarah made her way to the hotel's executive floor, using stolen keycards and forged authorization codes that Foster had provided. Her rifle components, smuggled into the building over 3 days through a dozen different channels, awaited assembly in a janitor's closet that overlooked the ballroom through service windows designed for cleaning crews. Kane's voice carried clearly through the hotel's audio system as she assembled her weapon with practiced efficiency. He was discussing the psychology of fear in asymmetric conflicts, explaining how the mere possibility of invisible enemies could paralyze entire organizations. The most effective weapons, Kane said, his amplified voice filling the building, are often the ones your enemy believes exist, rather than the ones they know are real. Fear of the unknown can accomplish more than any conventional military force. Sarah settled into her shooting position, the irony of his words not lost on her. Kane had created Divine Ghost as a psychological weapon, never realizing that he would eventually become her target. His voice continued to drone on about military theory, while she calculated wind speed, distance, and bullet drop with the mechanical precision that had made her legendary. Through her scope, Kane's face filled her view in perfect detail. He looked confident and authoritative as he gestured toward slides that illustrated his theories about modern warfare. The audience hung on his every word, unaware that they were listening to a traitor who had sold their secrets to the highest bidder. Sarah's breathing slowed as the familiar calm settled over her. This shot was for Prague, where she had unknowingly helped Kane eliminate a business rival. It was for Marrakesh, where she had nearly died in a trap designed to sell her services to foreign bidders. It was for every operator who had died because Kane had leaked their positions to enemy forces. Most of all, it was for the naive young woman who had believed she was serving her country when she was actually serving one man's greed. Kane paused in his presentation to take a sip of water, turning slightly toward her position as he did so. For just an instant, their eyes seemed to meet across the impossible distance that separated them. His expression shifted from confidence to confusion, to understanding in the space of a heartbeat. He knew. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger just as Kane's mouth opened to shout a warning that would never come. The rifle's report was muffled by the suppressor she had crafted from hotel pillows and duct tape, producing a sound no louder than a book falling from a shelf. Kane's head snapped backward as the bullet found its mark, his body crumpling behind the podium like a marionette with severed strings. For several seconds, the audience continued to applaud, thinking his sudden disappearance was part of some elaborate presentation. Then someone screamed, and the ballroom erupted into chaos. Sarah was already moving, breaking down her rifle and preparing for extraction, as security teams converged on the ballroom like hunting wolves. Her escape route led through service corridors that would carry her to a parking garage, where Foster waited with transportation to the airport. The plan worked flawlessly until she reached the garage's exit, where 6 men in expensive suits were waiting with weapons drawn and expressions that promised violence. "Divine Ghost," said their leader, a man with silver hair and scars that spoke of old battles. "I am Director Harrison, of the Prometheus Group. We need to talk." Sarah's hand moved toward her concealed pistol, but Harrison raised his hand peacefully. "The mission is complete, and General Kane is dead," he continued. "Your contract with us is fulfilled, and payment has been transferred to the accounts you specified. But we have a proposition that we think you'll find interesting." "I'm not looking for more work." Harrison smiled with the confidence of someone who held cards his opponent couldn't see. "This isn't about work. This is about retirement. Permanent retirement with a new identity so complete that not even we will know where you've gone." Sarah studied the faces around her, reading the micro-expressions that revealed intentions and deceptions. These men were professionals, but they weren't here to capture or eliminate her. They genuinely wanted to make a deal. "What's the catch?" "Divine Ghost dies today," Harrison said simply. "The legend ends with Kane's assassination. Sarah Chen disappears completely, and someone entirely new takes her place. New face, new history, new life. All we ask in return is your word that the woman who emerges from this garage will never pick up a rifle again." The offer was everything she had dreamed of during the long nights of running and hiding. A chance to stop being hunted, to stop killing, to maybe find some measure of peace in a world that had forgotten how to offer it to people like her. But it would also mean abandoning the only identity she had known for years. Divine Ghost had become more than a legend. She had become who Sarah truly was. Without that purpose, that focus, that deadly clarity, what would be left? "Why?" she asked. "Why help me disappear?" Harrison's expression grew serious. "Because legends are dangerous things. They inspire others to follow the same path, to believe they can become something more than human through violence and skill. The world doesn't need more divine ghosts. It needs fewer." Sarah looked around the garage one final time, seeing her reflection in the polished surfaces of expensive cars that belonged to people who would never understand what she had sacrificed to keep them safe. In those reflections, she saw not Divine Ghost, the legendary sniper, but Sarah Chen, the exhausted woman who had given up everything in service to a lie. The choice was surprisingly easy. Where do I sign? 3 months later, a woman named Catherine Walsh opened a small bookstore in a coastal town in New Zealand. She had dark hair instead of black, green eyes instead of brown, and a past that existed only in carefully constructed records that would satisfy any background check. The townspeople found her friendly but private. Someone who kept to herself, but always had time to help tourists find the perfect book for their vacation reading. She seemed to know something about everything, spoke several languages fluently, and had an uncanny ability to recommend exactly the right story for whatever mood someone happened to be in. Children liked her especially, drawn by her willingness to read aloud and her talent for making even boring books sound exciting. Their parents appreciated that she somehow always knew when they needed a few minutes to browse in peace, and how she could make recommendations that helped them reconnect with reading after years of being too busy for books. Catherine Walsh seemed to have found the perfect life. Quiet, peaceful, meaningful in small but important ways. She woke each morning to the sound of ocean waves, spent her days surrounded by stories that transported people to other worlds, and fell asleep each night with the satisfaction of having made other people's lives a little bit better. But sometimes, late at night when the bookstore was closed and the town was asleep, Catherine would stand at her window and look out at the endless ocean. In those moments, her hand would unconsciously form the grip of a rifle that no longer existed, and her eyes would track seabirds with the precision of someone calculating distance and wind speed. Divine Ghost was dead, buried so completely that even the intelligence agencies that had spent years hunting her had closed their files and moved on to other threats. But the skills remained, dormant but not forgotten, like muscles that remembered their purpose even after years of disuse. Catherine told herself she was happy with her new life, and most of the time she believed it. She helped customers find books, recommended authors they had never heard of, and listened to the problems of people who trusted her with their stories without knowing hers. It was a good life. A peaceful life. A life that most people would envy. It was also a life that sometimes felt like death by 1,000 small compromises. The woman who had once been Divine Ghost understood that this was the price of redemption. Not a single moment of dramatic change, but the slow, patient work of building something better from the wreckage of what came before. Some days, the price seemed worth paying. Other days, she wondered if legends were meant to have happy endings at all. But in the quiet moments between customers, when sunlight streamed through her bookstore windows and children laughed at the stories she read to them, Catherine Walsh knew that she had made the right choice. The world was safer with Divine Ghost dead and buried, even if that meant the woman who had been her could never again be fully alive. The legend had ended not with a bullet, but with a signature on papers that made her disappear more completely than any grave ever could. And perhaps, Catherine thought as she arranged books on shelves that would never hold the weight of a rifle, that was the only way such stories were ever supposed to end. In the distance, waves crashed against cliffs that had stood for millions of years, patient and eternal, and utterly indifferent to the small dramas of human ambition and redemption. The sound was peaceful, Catherine decided. It was the sound of Divine Ghost finally coming home.